Hi everyone, it's Brenda back with another episode of Three Uniques. Today I have on Tanya Tourangeau. Hi Tanya, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Brenda. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you on. So, Tanya is a consultant, her own company called Tanya T Consulting, and she leads reconciliation work through joint economic development, policy development, strategic planning, stakeholder relations, and organizational change. And some other pieces that you've got in there, it's all about, I guess, bridging partnerships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous governments and communities. So tell us a little bit more about this work, this incredibly needed work.
Yeah, absolutely. To me, reconciliation is really important. Although the 94 calls to action came out in 2015, which is, approaching 7 years ago now, we really haven't advanced as far as we could have as a country with reconciliation. And what I found in my work is that there needed to be this bridge builder between Indigenous and non-Indigenous organizations, governments, and really just personal relationships to help guide that process, to navigate really what those calls to action are and what reconciliation can mean personally to everyone, because it's not the same for everyone. And so for me, I really help find the value in that for the people that I consult with. And it's really building a better Canada for everyone.
And there's out of the 94, right? Am I correct in that? Yes.
Correct. Yeah.
Truth and Reconciliation Committee recommendations, we are nowhere close to that number, right? I think it's less than 10, I believe, that have been implemented.
See, and this is one of
That's what I
the
wanted to clarify. Yeah, sorry.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So to clarify, all 94 calls to action aren't meant to be completed by one entity.
Okay.
That there's separation within the 94 calls to action that, for example, apply to the federal government only, that
Mhm.
apply to the provincial government, that apply to municipalities. And the one that I focus on is one call to action, call number 92, which is business and reconciliation.
Mm.
And within that one call to action, it lays out perfectly. It's like the Commission for the Truth and Reconciliation did all the research, did all the homework for all the businesses and how to accomplish reconciliation. And so what I focus is on that for businesses, and how to start their reconciliation journey. So although you hear in the news, we only have 6 calls to action complete, or we've only accomplished a small percentage, that it's really understanding what are you responsible for in those 94 calls to action and what you can do personally within them.
I love that because again, it's about self-empowerment. And because I started the call thinking, oh my gosh, we're nowhere near this. And then it becomes sort of futile. Like, where do I begin? I'm only one person in Canada. I don't run in public office. I'm not a politician. I don't work for the government. Oh well, hands up, can't do anything.
Absolutely. And
Mm,
most businesses, they're not going to, take out that guide, those 94 calls,
right.
read all the way through it and finally get to 92 and go, "Oh, that's what I'm supposed to do." They're going to get discouraged going through there.
Mhm.
And and that's where I was like, this is my focus now. I'm going to be a reconciliation strategist that really helps, like, again, navigate the process, build those bridges, and hopefully come together in really meaningful ways.
And so, what called you? Like when you mentioned earlier about the reconciliation journey, what was your journey to get to this point in your career, your consulting business, and how you're supporting companies?
Absolutely. I think that's just a perfect segue into my three uniques.
Okay.
What brings me there. And number one, it's about being First Nation and coming to a point in my life that I take great pride and responsibility in being First Nation.
Mhm.
That I am a daughter of a residential school survivor.
Mhm.
I'm a granddaughter, I'm a great granddaughter, I'm a great great granddaughter, I'm a cousin, I'm a niece.
Mhm.
And I am the survivor of my ancestors who went through great trauma and tragedy from assimilation policies and colonization that was forced upon us.
Right.
And now in 2021, I am one in 900,000 First Nation people surviving in Canada,
Mm-hmm.
going from surviving to thriving. We make up only 2.6% of the Canadian population. However, we are the youngest and fastest growing population in Canada. And to me, that is my unique. That is me, coming from a history of a negative history
Yeah.
that we're dealing with so many problems today with that. For me, it's this personal responsibility of, of bringing change, of saying it doesn't have to always be that way,
Mm-hmm.
that uh, we're still surviving assimilation, you know, we're still surviving cultural genocide, we're still surviving systematic racism. However, today I can say that I'm treaty, I'm First Nation, and I'm proud. And I'm not going to let anyone, cut my hair, put
Right.
me in a school,
Yeah.
stop me from being who I am, or make me be white.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about that. That's the start of my journey of assisting with reconciliation. Because for the last 150 years, my people were taught not to take pride in who we are, not to admit that we're First Nation or we're treaty, and not to acknowledge our culture, our language, our background, our history. And so I'm the first in my family to, graduate high school, to go to post-secondary, to consult in this way and walk in both worlds, where I'm honoring who I am as a First Nation person, but also building those bridges between non-Indigenous people as well.
Just an acknowledgement first for you for showing up in this space and sharing your story with us, sharing your journey of reconciliation and just your own personal story into who you are and the acknowledgement of what came before you, your family, like you said, you're a granddaughter, you're a daughter, and you've got this legacy, which yeah, there's the negative behind it. And then there's also this rich culture that at times was taken away from you and told that you couldn't honor it. But it's still so there. And the fact that you are seeing this emergence of this thriving group of people that are strong. Like I think it's really inspiring because it knowing I guess the other point is like through my own journey with reconciliation and learning more about the Indigenous people across what we know as Canada. Like, I don't want to, I'm very conscious about saying our Canadian Indigenous people. Like, that is just, it's wrong to say that, to put that label on a culture, on a race. But for my own journey growing up as a Canadian girl in Canada, not knowing, not being educated, not being encouraged to know my neighbor and honor the differences that we have was a real shame. And it's been something that I've had to like just forgive myself, forgive my, I don't know, teachers, my family, and say, okay, it begins today. Like my reconciliation journey begins today. There's lots to make up, but it begins today. For me, it was probably a couple years ago, and just keep learning, keep connecting, keep understanding.
Mhm.
And then advocating like when I see things in the news like um, recently obviously being in British Columbia seeing some of the things that have been happening in northern parts of BC or on Vancouver Island and not questioning or dismissing it but really understanding it and then talking to people that can make a difference.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely.
thank you so much for sharing that. I could feel the emotions that were coming up with that for you and I hope the listeners hear that too and just, continue to just be in curiosity, be in compassion, be in, that advocacy to change. So thank you.
Thank you, Brenda.
Um, when that question of reconciliation journey, what does that look like? Like, when people want to uncover that. I mean, you've shared sort of yours. Um, I could go into it with mine more in detail, but I would love to hear from you more about how do people explore that?
Mhm. I think what you just said is a really important first step to take. It's acknowledging the past and not being ashamed of the past.
Hmm.
A part of my work is not about bringing blame to anyone. It's
Right.
not about pointing fingers or saying that they have to take on that trauma that I have, or that we have as generations, people in Canada. And that's the part of the truth and reconciliation that you may have heard this year, especially with the declaration of the national holiday, is that you can't have reconciliation without truth.
Right.
And so a part of starting that with people is sharing a little bit about my truth of where I come from. And you're really awesome at this. It goes right into my second unique that I declared is being a cycle breaker,
Right.
and having people understand the cycles that I've needed to break, and that these cycles aren't just unique to me. It's my unique feature.
Mhm.
But our people have had to come face to face with many cycles, negative cycles that assimilation and colonization has brought on for our people.
Mhm.
Um, our people are not, our young people are not graduating the same in high school as non-Indigenous people. We are not entering post-secondary the same. We're not business owners or landowners the same. There's actually this study in Calgary just in 2019
Mhm.
that 60% of the high school students weren't graduating. And that's just in 2019. I mentioned that I make up 2.6% of the Canadian population. However, in jails, we make up 50% plus of the federal population in federal prisons. Young people are committing suicide 5 times, 7 times the rate as non-Indigenous people. So for me, I had to be a cycle breaker. Because my mom was a residential school survivor. My mom wasn't a great parent. My mom was a terrible parent.
Mhm.
And my mom brought me to my first bar when I was 12 years old. And I was drinking at a very young age. And I was being exploited by adults that very much look the same I do now at that young age of being tall. And I could pass for 18. And it led me to being pregnant at the age of 14. And my story could have stopped there of being a young single mom, not being in high school, not being in post-secondary, not being a business owner today. And my son brought this light to me that I wanted things to change, that I could see
Mhm.
that I wanted to be a better parent, that even though my mom couldn't identify with being a better parent for many reasons,
Right.
that at that point of my life when I was pregnant, that I wanted better for my son. And I took 6 months off to be a mom and focus on my son. And I went back to high school. I finished high school in 2.5 years and just started my career of building capacity for Indigenous people and walking a better road that not only included breaking those cycles, but breaking the cycle of loss of culture. So embracing my culture, uh, um, embracing my language, teaching my boys, a bit of our language, and teaching my boys. Eventually, had 2 sons.
Mhm.
Pride and confidence in who we are, and it's bringing that understanding to non-Indigenous people that we're forced, to break those cycles,
Right.
that things need to change. And that although I was able to do it, all of our young people need the help to also make that change. Because we are the fastest and the youngest growing population,
Mhm.
that there's studies now that if we were equal to non-Indigenous people
Mhm.
in being successful in Canada,
Right.
we could raise the GDP by $100 billion. Imagine that. It's that old quote that when the tide rises, all boats rise.
Yes.
Imagine how much richer Canada would be if Indigenous people like me were all graduating. We're all being successfully employed. We're
Mhm.
all homeowners. We're all landowners,
Mhm.
all contributing, adults to the society rather than being in jail addicted to drugs and alcohol. You know, that we could solve our deficit in Canada with investing in our Indigenous people. And so that's what brings me, down my road of then being a bridge builder, my final unique with leading to reconciliation, because we can't do it alone. And reconciliation is not meant to be walked a path alone. That there's a quote that you may have heard recently of nothing for us without us. So I help non-Indigenous governments, corporations, people understand that, you know, let's find that road together. Let's find that path together, because reconciliation can be a win-win solution for everyone. It's not about the non-Indigenous person paying back the Indigenous person
Right.
or reparations. It's
Mhm.
about creating a better tomorrow that benefits everyone. And that's what true reconciliation means. When you have a fight with someone or you have an argument with your friend and you reconcile,
Mhm.
it's not a win-lose situation. And that's the same with Indigenous people. We want partnerships, we want collaboration, we want economic development opportunities.
Mhm.
We want to be a part of Canada. And that's why I love what I do.
And like, first of all, like, thank you so much for sharing the cycle breaker unique, and then how that goes into your bridge builder. I think where I'm sitting with it, it continues to feed my own reconciliation journey. So I appreciate you extending that to me. Um, and then the context that you gave, because I think people do look at reconciliation in some cases, some lenses, and you mentioned it. And again, it's everyone's personal journey with it and just being open to the possibility. It's that it's not about taking from one to give to another to pay back for something that generations before us did, our great great grandparents did, etc., or voted someone into office to do. And it may be a little bit of that, just like acknowledgement that those things happen, which is also rewriting our history books, teaching the next generation of Indigenous and non-Indigenous children that this is actually what happened in Canada, that
Exactly.
the colonists didn't save the Indigenous people. That we,
Right?
it's like they were fine, just fine without us. And
Yes.
and here are the stories, and here's the legacies that really should be celebrated and come forward with, and that how we can learn from uh, the guardians of this land that really taught us then and have continued to teach us what we could be doing better, for the environment and for how we want to live, customs, practices. And then, so I think that needs to be sort of cleared for people, and that they need to understand that that's where it can also happen, is like, let's just rewrite the history books and get the truth out there, even if it's painful
Yeah,
for Indigenous and non-Indigenous, because that's part of the clearing process, is to
absolutely.
open the wound, clear it out, and then rebuild from there. And then the other thing that you talked about is, yeah, if we lift everyone up, what that can do. Like,
Right.
and I was in a conversation group the other day. It's like, how much do you need? Right? How much is enough? And
Hmm.
yes, you can give to foundations and charitable organizations, and that's still good. But at the same time, it's like, how much do you need to earn? And is there an opportunity to really lift the other side so that we all can benefit from it? And our children can benefit, that next legacy. And it's just across the board. I think it's a beautiful thing that you just mentioned. And the fact that here's a reality, folks. If you're in business, because I do take this back to business and I'm coaching business leaders all the time, is yeah, who is your client? And if you're telling me that the Indigenous population in Canada is the fastest growing, that's
Mhm.
your future customer.
Absolutely.
So you better understand what they're looking for.
Mhm. And maybe even your future employee,
And
you know,
future employee
those,
or your future employer if you're
yeah,
looking for a job. And
or
it's all
business
about,
partner,
yeah, a
you know.
business partner. So a culture that was overlooked for so many generations, it's like it's coming back tenfold.
Absolutely. There's an old quote by Louis Riel. I'm not Métis, but we
Mhm.
all believe in it, that our people will sleep for 100 years and then resurge. And we
Mm.
truly believe that that's happening now.
Wow, that's a goosebump quote right there.
Right? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then it also, I guess it's also about how do we generate that faster in a thoughtful way, but faster, right? So I'm hearing like Indigenous young people need
Yeah.
mentorship, they need coaching, they need resources, they need allies.
Absolutely. Allies. They need supporters. And they need to be included, you know,
Yeah.
build upon our young people's strengths.
And so is that something that you feel like, again, organizations can be a part of in their reconciliation journey, that they can be, creating mentorship programs and internship programs, things like that to bring in, but again, in a thoughtful way, right? So that
Yeah. So call number 92, Business and Reconciliation, deals one with developing relationships with your local Indigenous communities.
Mhm.
So if you have First Nation, Métis, nearby Inuit, building that relationship. The second is about increasing employment opportunities for Indigenous people. So being more inclusive.
Mhm.
The third is economic community development opportunities. So maybe it's procurement, having a percentage of procurement that's available, or maybe you're doing joint ventures.
Right.
And the final one is about employee education. So bringing that truth
Right.
right into maybe even in orientation, right? A lot of these companies who are bringing in immigrants is like understanding what Canada is and what it represents.
Mhm.
And so from a business, it goes back to that number 92, and where do you want to start? And for me, I always recommend aligning your values. Whatever you identify within your business should be what you identify with in your reconciliation plan. If your business is focused on sustainability and being, a greener tomorrow, well, come to the Indigenous side and partner with someone who has that exactly. If your Indigenous is about youth, absolutely go to the youth organizations. And mentorship and internship, those are fantastic ways to lift our youth.
So what lifts you up? Like who's your mentor? Who's your guide that keeps you inspired,
Mm.
keeps you leading that light that you're so brightly shining?
Thank you so much for asking that. I had the benefit. I don't know what inspired my aunt. She's no longer with us today, but when I was born so many years ago, she was 70 when I was born. And I don't know what made her take care of me and support me through all my hard times. But
Mhm.
she did, right to the time when she was, 99 and a half years old. And she really instilled in me being the bridge builder. She was a famous chef. She actually cooked for Chrétien.
Mm.
She was sent for all over the north to go on these major boats to cook for white people. And she always made it a point to bring me around
Mhm.
to communicate. And I used to hate it. I'd be like, oh my God, I don't want to talk to white people, Auntie. Not realizing now that she was instilling that bridge builder in me. She was teaching me how to walk in both worlds. she was teaching me how to not only, honor my family and my Indigenous side, but recognizing that I would need those skills to be successful later on in life. And so I really take my teachings that she left me still today. I feel that, she's never left me, although she's, left me on this earth, she's not left me spiritually. And I take her guidance with me every day.
It's a wonderful story. Can you invite us into a ritual or a practice that you use to ground yourself? Because I'm sure in the work that you come across, there are moments where you are exposed to things that are disruptive, and to stay in that space, you need some grounding.
Absolutely, I will. Before I share that,
Hmm.
I I just wanted to say that in our culture we don't believe in perfection or knowing everything.
Hmm.
And this one time I was sitting with my nieces, and it was just one of those days that they were reaching out to me a lot, and I asked my older niece, I was like, why, how do I communicate with my younger nieces, or why do they want to talk to me? And my niece, her name is Alexis, she's like, because you made it out, Auntie. And
Yeah.
that's what also drives me,
Hmm.
that not only that I have a mentor, but that I'm also have the responsibility of mentoring those that come after me.
Hmm.
So the practice that grounds me, Brenda, is that traditional teaching. And it's a teaching that goes back to my hair. And I have to share that not every Indigenous person who has long hair is spiritual and believes this, and nor if they braid their hair, they do.
Okay.
But for me, these are my teachings from my elders.
Hmm.
And so our hair represents our life. And we braid our hair in three for specific reasons. And so the first section of the braid represents your body. The second is your mind, and the third is your spirit. And I was taught that you braid your hair together like this
Hmm.
to bring you strength and to ground you. And that on those days that I need that I braid my hair. And I often go to bed every night braiding my hair
Yeah.
for that.
Hmm.
And the teaching is that I am stronger together with all three of them being balanced. That is my strength, that is my life. And that
Beautiful.
sometimes it's just seeing myself in the mirror with my braids
Hmm.
that brings me back to that reminds me that I am walking in both worlds, that I do have the traditions and the culture behind me, and my ancestors taught me well.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Very personal connection to who you are. So I appreciate that. My closing question for you is, and I take this question from Tim Ferriss, who wrote a book. He uses a word that I guess I don't necessarily like as much used in this context, but he calls his book The Tribe of Mentors. And in that book, he has questions that he typically asks people. And one of them is, if I was to give you a billboard and you could have it anywhere in the world and it could have anything on it, what would it say and where would you put it?
Oh gosh, that is such an interesting one. Yeah, I have to say, I liked him. I haven't heard that before, but yeah, I'm totally against appropriating words and
Yes.
different contexts. A billboard anywhere that says anything, gosh. I'd want two, Brenda. I'd want one.
Okay,
I'd
good.
want one on my First Nation
Uh-huh.
that says, "There's power in choice,"
Hmm.
and it goes back to being a cycle breaker. And then I would want to pick the most densely populated white population of power and corporation. Maybe that's Ottawa, maybe that's Vancouver, maybe that's Toronto.
Yeah.
With that reconciliation, nothing for us without us. Call me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, if I could gift that to you, I would. And appreciation for sharing your journey of reconciliation with us and how you inspire others to take that on. So thank you so much for joining us today, Tanya, and sharing your three uniques with us and just inviting us more into your world. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Brenda. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
And where can people find you if they want to work with you and go on this journey with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I have my own website, tanyat.co. And also, you find me on LinkedIn, Tanya Tourangeau, Tourangeau.
And we'll make sure that we have that all in the show notes for folks. So thanks again, Tanya.
Excellent. Thank you, Brenda.